The title of this video is How to Know If You're Spiritually Evolving. You might have spent years immersed in spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, sweat lodges, chanting, profound self-inquiry, and yet you still wonder, how far have I truly progressed on my spiritual path? Well, physical achievements are pretty easy to measure, but when it comes to spiritual evolution, it unfolds on a much deeper and a much more subtle level. And that makes it pretty hard to quantify. Not to mention the fact that some have tried to do that. For instance, David Hawkins' scale that goes from 0 to 1,000, and Ken Wilber's 12 levels of consciousness. Both methods are good attempts to help seekers know where they are in their evolution. And both systems make a contribution to understanding the wide spectrum of consciousness evolution that we observe in people. But the question remains, how do you know if you're spiritually evolving? Or another way to ask the question is, what are the characteristics of a spiritually evolving person? But first of all, let's ask the question, what exactly is spiritual evolution? Well, it's actually a process of elimination rather than acquisition or accumulation. A lot of people think that you actually work to develop saintly qualities, but and you might even think that saints and enlightened teachers work to develop certain qualities. And no doubt some have approached it that way. But your spiritual evolution actually requires the opposite of gaining more. It requires a reduction by peeling away the many layers of ego-driven needs, attachments, wants, and illusions that are actually obscuring your true nature and your true purpose and your divine potential. And so this is actually why enlightened teachers have traditionally said that you are already enlightened. Now, I know that's a statement that has no doubt confused a lot of people. Imagine your spiritual evolution is like shedding layers of an onion. Each reveals a deeper, more authentic essence within. And as these layers fall away, you experience an expansion of consciousness, a heightened awareness, and oneness realization. And that transcends all analytical thinking and all intellectual conclusions that you might come to. At its core, spiritual evolution is actually a journey of revelation, which means a gradual uncovering or unveiling of your soul or higher self, sometimes also referred to as your true self. And that involves shifting from an ego-identified personality to a soul-centered life. And as the transformation deepens, there arises a progressive sense of spiritual awareness, often accompanied by moments of profound oneness and sometimes bliss, ecstasy, and euphoria. It's really not easy to find words to adequately express what awakening to higher levels of spiritual realization are like. There's also this ancient saying that the truth shall never be written. Maybe you've heard of this and you thought, wow, well, so these mystery schools and secret societies were actually suppressing truth. But that's not actually what that means. The truth shall never be written means it can't be written because as soon as you put words to the experience of higher consciousness, you've downgraded the reality of the experience. The essence of spiritual truth cannot be fully captured in words. It must be directly experienced. And so because of this, it has led some skeptics to ridicule those who describe transcendent experiences as deluded. And if a person has not had such an experience, they're actually incapable of relating to it. But they would never admit that because their egos are so strong it wouldn't let them admit that. So they feel more comfortable trying to discount the reality of it through outright ridicule or sometimes just outright insults. So those who've had the experience know very well words can point you to the truth, but they can never embody the truth. So the truth is, the truth shall never be written. Now, in order to have the experience, in almost all cases, it requires being in a meditative state where you shut off the thinking mind in order to directly experience higher realization and higher states of awareness. And for those who've never done that, it sounds like fantasy, like you're just making it up in your head. But for those who have, they recognize some things that are so profound that they can't even put it into words. So this gives you a little bit of a background when I'm talking about your spiritual evolution. And all this being said, there are at least 10 signs that you are spiritually evolving. Undoubtedly, there's a lot more, but I'm going to go over 10 major ones. And these are all noticeable transformations that occur as you progress on your spiritual path. I'm going to briefly discuss each one now, but I have a lot more of them in my book, Handbook for Enlightenment and Ascension, that's readily available on Amazon. So here are some key indicators that you are spiritually evolving. Number one, life becomes a series of spiritual opportunities. I'm going to repeat that because it's a very important shift in consciousness and in perspective. Life becomes a series of spiritual opportunities. Whereas those who are unaware of how life works, or what I mean by spiritual opportunities, they assume that they're victims of fate they don't understand. Or maybe they think they have good luck sometimes and bad luck sometimes. Or maybe they just think that they have some kind of a subconscious program that's causing their life to be a struggle. However, when a person is awakening to higher spiritual perspectives, they begin to approach life's challenges very differently. They view frustrating traffic, broken appliances, relationship difficulties, money problems, or other kinds of conflicts as opportunities for growth rather than as bad luck or as punishment. A very powerful sign of spiritual growth is the increasing ability to remain calm and centered, even when you're in a challenging situation. Emotional triggers that used to grab you in the past lose their grip on you as you develop greater self-awareness and also detachment from reactive patterns. So instead of feeling victimized by circumstances or blaming others or labeling it as karma, you recognize every experience as a spiritual opportunity. Each moment becomes a chance to embody patience, acceptance, and peaceful surrender. So life is no longer seen to be happening to you, but rather for you. All the while offering valuable gifts for your soul's evolution and expansion every day. For example, situations that once sparked anger or anxiety may now be met with compassion, understanding, patience, and a sense of spaciousness. When your refrigerator suddenly stops working, instead of reacting with frustration, you pause, take a breath, and you use it as a moment to practice surrender and calm presence. And you might even reflect on the impermanence of material things and express gratitude for the abundance that you do have. Number two, a second indicator that you're spiritually evolving is material attachments lose their grip. So at one time, success, wealth, and material gain seemed central to your happiness. And now you find yourself seeing through those illusions. Illusions masquerading as sources of external fulfillment. Material success, status, any kind of external validation often lose their hold as you deepen into spirituality. Instead, qualities such as unconditional love, living in integrity, and other forms of deep spiritual realizations and wisdom take precedence. You may find yourself drawn toward simplicity and a life aligned with higher purposes. Now, you might still appreciate abundance, of course. You realize true happiness, joyfulness, all kinds of fulfillment arise from your inner state of consciousness, not from anything that you possess or anything that you achieve. It may give you a little bit of a thrill for a while, but it doesn't last very long. Maybe you've noticed. So maybe in the past, you used to seek happiness through purchasing things, but now you feel a deeper fulfillment through simplicity and through meaningful connections. Perhaps something as simple as spending more time in nature. A third indicator that you are spiritually evolving is you have a feeling like you're awakening from a dream. Spiritual growth often brings a profound shift in how you perceive the present moment. Your mind becomes much quieter. You experience deeper states of stillness and awareness. And there's something often referred to as presence. You experience a profound shift in perception as though you're waking up from a long dream. It's as if you now become aware of deeper truths. So previously you may have accepted that what you have read or maybe heard, and you lived on an autopilot mode. But now you feel more aware, both inwardly and outwardly. And this heightened awareness brings increased compassion for the suffering in the world. So time might even feel less linear. There's a heightened sense of the sacredness in ordinary moments. Watching the sunrise, hearing a bird song, listening to a breeze through the trees, or just feeling the rhythm of your own breath. A fourth indicator that you're spiritually evolving is expanding love and compassion. A hallmark of spiritual evolution is a profound deepening of love and compassion, not just for friends and family, but for all beings, and that includes animals, the environment, it includes insects, it includes everything, living and not living. It's like a respect for all creation. And also includes those who may have harmed you or others in the past. As you evolve spiritually, your heart opens more fully to the suffering and the struggling that so many people have. And it awakens a compassion that becomes your natural response. Not because you're obligated to, or you read it in a book, or you heard that some saint was that way, but it comes from a deep recognition of the interconnectedness of all beings and a recognition that no one wants to struggle or suffer. So acts of kindness, forgiveness, and service begin to flow effortlessly from this expanded heart space. So, for example, you find yourself empathizing with someone who hurt you, recognizing that there was some pain that drove their action rather than you reacting toward them with anger or resentment. They were suffering in some way. They had some kind of an internal pain. And that's what led them to be angry at you or to yell at you. It was a reflection of their own pain. Number 5, a fifth indicator that you're spiritually evolving is a much greater understanding of difficult people. So you begin to see beyond the surface behavior and into the deeper emotional wounds and traumas that drive people's actions. This understanding allows you to respond with more patience, more forgiveness, more empathy. So you're less likely to hold anger or be intolerant or to snap to judgments about the other person. Most people are living on autopilot. They're motivated by subconscious wants and needs. Their ego personality is in survival mode and doing the very best it can to keep that person safe and secure. And this can often cause strong emotional reactions. It could trigger a fear or a latent anger or something the person's very worried about, or maybe they feel guilty about something. And maybe all of that leads them to feel like they must have much more control, that they're losing control. And that can scare a person. So when you experience someone lashing out at you or overreacting, you now know they're expressing their inner pain that results from some past negative treatment or condition that they experienced or they observed. For example, let's say somebody yells at you or criticizes you. You will no longer take it personally, but instead you will sense their underlying stress or their emotional pain. And in this way, you can respond with compassion, with patience, with understanding, rather than retaliation or defensiveness. Now, a sixth indicator is dissolution of the ego's grip. As the ego gradually diminishes, its dominance, its control over your life weakens. Old wounds, limiting beliefs, emotional pain often rise to the surface, but they're only coming up to be released and healed. And so this process can sometimes be emotionally intense, but it's ultimately liberating. You can shed layer upon layer of past karma, past conditioning, and move into higher frequency levels of consciousness. I know this is a very broad topic because it encompasses essentially every aspect of human beliefs, reactions, motivations, and all the history of suffering, dominance, struggling. And I'm not going to take time to go into every detail here about the ego. I have a lot more about this in my book, The Soul Solution, and also the Handbook for Enlightenment. But this is a topic that you really need to get educated on because it explains what motivates you and also what limits you. If you don't really know what the ego is or how it works or what it believes or what it wants, then you don't really even know how to address it. So as the ego loses its grip, there is a shift from identifying with personal stories and self-importance to recognizing the vast, boundless nature of your soul and your true self. Humility and a sense of unity with all existence replace pride, ego drives, ego wants, and ego needs. A seventh indicator that you're spiritually evolving is you recognize that your life is unfolding in cycles. As your spiritual journey unfolds, You begin to perceive that life is not a straight, predictable shot upward. It's actually a beautifully intricate spiral. And this profound shift in awareness reveals that existence moves through recurring cycles of growth, rest, decay, renewal, rebirth. This is the way the natural world cycles are through the seasons. You have spring's bloom, summer's abundance, autumn's shedding, and winter's stillness. And so too do your personal experiences echo these rhythms. When challenges arise, you understand they're not permanent, but they're part of a cycle. So think of them as phases that you go through on your journey, and they're all temporary. So you're going to move through them. You're going to get past them. For example, personal setbacks or emotional lows become opportunities for reflection and eventual renewal, much like the earth resting in winter before the vibrant rebirth in the spring. So you also are reassured that all spiritual journeys have plateaus and fluctuations. Sometimes maybe even it feels like you're going backward a little bit. And this cyclical understanding brings an emotional balance and resilience. So you don't resist life's natural ebb and flow, and you live your life more surrendered to what life is bringing to you. And you embrace every experience as an essential aspect of your journey toward deeper wisdom, deeper self-discovery, deeper spiritual evolution. And remember, it's just a phase. It will pass. The eighth indicator that you're spiritually evolving is you recognize that life is a series of stories. I touched on this very briefly in the sixth indicator of spiritual evolution when I said, as the ego loses its grip, there is a shift from identifying with personal stories. But this point is so important because it's a major way that your ego-based mind operates. It's a hallmark of spiritual maturity. Having a realization that you are not your thoughts, and certainly not the stories that your thoughts weave together. So no matter how strongly you believe them and how strongly they seem to be true or real, they're just made up. They're interpretations, in a sense, opinions. You see, your mind generates countless ideas, beliefs, narratives all day long. But these mental constructs do not define your core soul. As you grow, you develop the ability to witness these thoughts, witness these stories, but you don't become entangled in them. So, for instance, you might notice there's an inner dialogue or self-talk of self-doubt or worry or fear or anger. But you recognize it's a conditioned response rather than coming from your soul or your true self. So by seeing thoughts as transient fabrications, you're able to disidentify from them. In other words, it's easier not to own them if you know that they're just fabrications that your mind came up with. And as you do that, you find there's a profound sense of inner peace and clarity. Now, this detachment doesn't mean that you ignore your thoughts. It really means you understand that your true nature is the vast, unchanging consciousness beneath those stories. And by practicing being mindful or through meditation, you create a space between yourself and those mental activities. And that leads to clarity, emotional freedom, and a much more grounded sense of self. The ninth indicator that you are spiritually evolving is you are comfortable allowing life to unfold before you. This world is obsessed with productivity. So slowing down productivity can seem to be counterintuitive. However, spiritual growth often reveals the profound wisdom in stillness. The soul thrives on wisdom derived from stillness, not from relentless activity, analysis. It comes from quiet moments of reflection, of being present with presence, inviting yourself into spaciousness, and having a quietness. A spiritually evolving person experiences a much clearer connection to the divine wisdom that is accessible through the higher self. And it can sometimes come through what you might call revelations or epiphanies or these quantum leaps in consciousness rather than through mental analysis. So insights can arise spontaneously, which will then guide your decisions with much more clarity and accuracy. Sometimes you'll even wonder where the ideas came from. I've heard musicians say that quite often when they're writing a song or composing some music. And you ask them, well, how'd you figure that one out? And then they'll tell you, well, it just came to me. I don't know where it came from. So as you become more attuned to your inner space, you're going to notice there are synchronicities that happen. There's these little intuitive nudges, or you'll find you have a stronger trust in your inner knowing. And it all makes you less reliant on other people's opinions, which is pretty much what you're hearing all day long. You'll find yourself drawn to moments of simplicity. Maybe it's just sitting quietly with a cup of coffee or tea, sitting and watching the sunset, or maybe just taking some deep breaths without an agenda. So instead of compulsively checking your phone every few seconds or seeking some other form of constant stimulation, you might find that you begin to savor moments of simply being. And one of the most profound signs of spiritual evolution is the experience of unity consciousness, which is actually a felt sense that you are not separate from light, but you are intimately connected with the entire universe and all of creation. This shift signals a deeper alignment with your soul. The constant drive to accumulate, achieve, and control comes from an ego-based personality. A desire to surrender and experience life fully comes from the soul. And that brings us to the 10th indicator that you're spiritually evolving. And it is this. You have more capacity to be discerning. As you deepen in your spiritual awareness, your capacity to distinguish truth from illusion gets a lot sharper. And this clarity is often described as spiritual discernment, which is the ability to allow the mind to be a tool for the soul to channel wisdom and insights rather than getting all entangled in analysis that simply leads to confusion. So, for example, you may begin to recognize when a spiritual teaching or a teacher or an organization is authentic versus when it feels off-center or misleading. And this discernment allows you to engage with spiritual practices and teachers and groups much more mindfully. seeking a depth of truth that has practical applications that improve your life and your experience with life. So discernment is not a judgment. It's a refined ability to sense what aligns with your highest truth. It empowers you to navigate life with both an open heart and a clear mind, balancing intuition with thoughtful reflection. And this enables you to more quickly discard sources that deflect you from direct experiences of true spirituality, which is merging and integrating with the highest enlightened awareness of your soul. Now, by this point, you recognize your spiritual evolution is not a linear path. It's really a lot more like a spiral, spiraling upward, a journey. At times, you might hit a plateau. At other times, there's a wonderful accelerated expansion. And over time, you'll find that those times of contraction or plateaus will become much less over time. So each circle around the spiral reveals new layers to be cleared and deeper understandings to come to. Now, if you resonate with these 10 signs, you can be assured you are evolving in important and very profound ways, even if at times the progress sometimes seems to be very subtle or slow or even immeasurable. Treasure and nurture your spiritual practice. Trust inner wisdom. Integrate and deepen into your soul's light and presence throughout your daily life. Your spiritual evolution is an ongoing journey. It's like a great adventure of new discoveries continuously unfolding and being presented to you. So my advice is cultivate curiosity. That may be one of the most important characteristics you can develop. Being curious about all kinds of things, because that's going to lead you to looking into areas where you might have looked before. That will feed your evolution. You can also ask a lot of questions. You tune into a meditative state into your inner space and you just throw questions out and you await the universe to bring back answers. Maybe not immediately. You might have to sit there for a while, or you might not even get it that day. But when you keep asking the questions, you'll get answers. And the more you refine your questions, the more refined your answers will be. So be grateful for every experience. Always be loving. And until next time, I am Jonathan Parkley.